So is it really about the evidence? Do atheists, agnostics, do they reject the idea that there is a God out there because of the lack of evidence, or is it something else? So let's dive into that today. As you know, and if you haven't read it, please go read this. It's a phenomenal book. It's called, and I don't make any money if you read it, other than just knowing that you're getting some really good information, is I Don't Have Enough Faith to Be an Atheist. All right. It's by Norman Geisler and Frank Turek. And in this book, they argue that the case for Christianity is not just reasonable, but it's actually the most rational conclusion based on the evidence. But there's a crucial problem, right? They bring up a really powerful topic that many atheists, many agnostics, they claim that they would believe in God if they had enough evidence. Yet, when they're presented with very compelling evidence, very compelling arguments that they admit that they don't know the answer to, they can't overcome that. They can't come up with an objection to that evidence. They still don't believe. They remain unconvinced. So why is that? So let's dive into that a little bit today. There's a big problem with bias. One of the key arguments in the book, I Don't Have Enough Faith Being Atheist, is that the evidence alone doesn't necessarily change people's beliefs. People don't evaluate evidence in a vacuum. They interpret it through their own bias, their own experiences, their own desires, really. That's a huge one. Jesus himself, he acknowledged that, in the Bible, he says that light has come into the world, but people love darkness instead of light because their deeds were evil. So, many reasons that skeptics, atheists, agnostics, they reject God, it's not because of the lack of evidence. If you would just read that book, you'd have your evidence. But they reject it because this belief in God, it carries responsibility. It carries moral implications, and they don't want to accept those implications. It's many of them, they claim that I just need one more piece of evidence. What you've shown me actually is, it could make a lot of sense, but it's just still not quite enough, right? I need more evidence. And history has shown that no amount of evidence is ever truly enough for someone who doesn't want to believe. If they're just do not want to believe it for whatever reason, most of the time it's just desire because they don't want to accept the moral implications that they would have to they would have, right? They don't want to believe it. Look at the Pharisees. They saw Jesus. They saw him perform miracles. They saw all the evidence showing that he had resurrected from the cross, but they still rejected him. Modern skeptics, they do the same thing. They dismiss all the historical evidence for the resurrection. I've already spoken a few weeks ago about the historical evidence for the Bible, the fine-tuning of the universe, moral objectivity, but they don't actually, if you really come down to the brass tacks, they don't reject all of this because the evidence is weak. The evidence is very strong, but because accepting it would require a transformation in how they live and think, and they don't want to do that. It's funny because atheism, that's typically framed as the neutral position, right? The rational position. While theism, belief in God, is painted as, oh, it's blind faith, it's fairy tale. You have to have a lot of faith to believe in that. But rejecting God, I would argue, and many people smarter than me would argue that rejecting God, despite the overwhelming evidence that is there, that actually requires more faith than to believe that there actually is a God. So the real issue here isn't the information. It's the willingness to surrender to the truth. There's a famous author, Blaise Pascal, and he was noted for saying people almost invariably arrive at their beliefs not on the basis of proof, but on the basis of what they find attractive, what feels good to them, what looks good to them, what requires the least amount of work on their part, right? What's the least amount of responsibility that they have to, come up with. So, ultimately, the debate about God's existence, it's not intellectual, or I should say it's not just intellectual, but it's actually deeply personal. The challenge for believers, for people like myself and other believers that are watching this, it's not just to provide the evidence, which we definitely need to do, or really need to know that and We need to educate ourselves. And once again, a great way to do that is to start with that book. But we also have the responsibility to pray for those around us, pray for the people, pray for the skeptics, pray for the atheists, pray for the agnostics, pray and engage their hearts, understanding that, for many of them, a lot of them, the greatest barrier to the belief, it's not their mind, it's not their evidence, it's not their lack of evidence, but it's their will, it's their desire, it's their bias. So to overcome that, God has to step in and open up their hearts and minds. So we can help, our part is through prayer, and we let God do the rest. We present the evidence and let God work in their hearts. So hope you get value out of this today. Appreciate y'all for watching. Obviously, any questions, let me know, but God bless, and I'll see you back next week. Take care. Bye.